Okay, so now that you have a basic understanding of the concept, let's move on to the first step, which is orienting each of the corners. Now, how are we defining orientation? Well, let's first look at how the cube is laid out. For the purpose of this blind solve, I have the blue face as my front face, the red face is my right face, and yellow is the top face. A corner is oriented if the sticker on the top face, I'm looking at the top right now, so the sticker on the top face matches the center sticker, or the opposite color sticker. So for example, green, red, yellow. Yellow is on the top and it matches yellow. Therefore this is oriented. The front right top piece is not oriented because orange does not match yellow. Likewise, this piece is oriented because yellow matches yellow, and this piece is not oriented. So hopefully that's pretty clear. Now let's look at the bottom. For the bottom, white matches white, therefore this is oriented. Red does not match white, therefore this is not oriented. And likewise, these two do not match white, so neither of these two corners are oriented. So that was a very simple example because there's just white or yellow, white and white and yellow and yellow. But what if I had a case like this? Now, you may think that none of these corners are oriented, but actually, for the purposes of blind solving, these two corners are oriented. And the reason why they are oriented is because when the second step is permutating the corners, which basically means moving the corner from here to here or here to here. So when you move it from one place to another, it's going to fix itself. So for orienting, as far as orienting is concerned, two corners are oriented here, even though they're the opposite color. So let's go through and orient each of the corners in this cube. So for this first corner, we have to turn it counterclockwise. And before I actually do this, I have to introduce two key concepts. One is called the buffer zone. The buffer zone in this first step of orienting corners is always going to be in the front left top side of the cube. So this piece right here. What we're going to do is, for each corner that needs to be oriented, we're going to need to put the piece into the buffer zone. After it's in the buffer zone, we execute an algorithm to either turn the piece clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on how it needs to be oriented. Once we've executed the algorithm, we move the piece back to where it belongs, and it should be oriented. The other concept that I need to introduce is called the undisturbance zone. When we're moving the pieces into the buffer zone, we should not disturb the undisturbance zone. And the undisturbance zone for this step is going to be the top left back face. Therefore, we can't turn the top left or back face. We can turn the front, right, and also the bottom face. So let's go through and orient each of the corners. This first corner is already in the buffer zone, and it needs to be turned anti-clockwise. Okay, so let's execute the algorithm. Now you'll notice when I do the algorithm, it kind of looks like that I took a break in between, halfway in between the algorithm. The reason for this is because the clockwise and anti-clockwise or counterclockwise algorithms are actually just inverses of each other. So it's very easy, just even muscle memory wise, to break it up into steps, and you'll see that I execute half the algorithm, move it up here, execute the other half, and move it back. So after you do the algorithm a couple times, you'll start to see what I mean. This one also needs to be turned anti-clockwise. So we have to move this piece into the buffer zone. Okay, so this is oriented. The final corner on the top needs to turn counterclockwise. Okay, so it's here. Now I just need to move it back. So you want to just turn it all the time the same way you got it to the buffer zone in the first place. That prevents you from, really screwing up the cube. One thing to note is you'll notice that sometimes after you execute the algorithm, the pieces in this undisturbance zone will change, and that's just by the nature. There's no algorithm that will just flip a piece in place. There's some sort of side effect. Now that side effect just will correct itself by the time you've done each of the cubes. This area tends to correct itself. For that reason, we don't even have to worry about this corner, about orienting it. And I'll get a little bit more into that later. And even in memorization, we don't even worry about if this corner is oriented or not oriented because it's in the undisturbance zone. So we'll never move this corner into the buffer zone. Okay, so moving on to the bottom. This is already oriented. This guy is already oriented. And this one needs to turn clockwise. Okay, so the clockwise, I can move it here. Move this guy to the top. And I'm putting it back. So this is oriented. Final piece is right here. Now this one needs to turn counterclockwise. So I have it over here. Okay. And now that the piece is back, you can see the entire cube is oriented.